There we go. Okay. If I can know how to work a microphone. So anyhow, initially before release, I started hearing horror stories about what it was going to be like deal with the PO, what it was going to be like be on the registry, just dealing with the community, and dealing with my family and friends and everybody else. And a lot of times it's coming from guys that have either just watched way too much news, or it's coming from the guys that haven't quite got it yet and end up coming back in. So that's also another point of why I'm so glad to be here to speak is if you are on the registry or know somebody on the registry right now, to hopefully alleviate some of those myths and give some advice on how to avoid the pitfalls that do come with the registry. Which before I get into that, a little brief background for myself is growing up, I was also a victim of sexual abuse, and that led me into alcoholism, which ultimately not an excuse, but a factor of my offending was due to the fact of I just did not care about anybody, anything, or myself for that matter. And obviously it's not an excuse to offend, I know that. It's just a little bit of where I came from. So I'm lucky to see both sides of the fence, both from the victim side and from the offense side. With that also came struggle because one, initially, I couldn't live with myself. I didn't know how I could overcome doing to somebody else what was done to me. And through getting incarcerated, actually, I was able to figure out something had to change, and that was myself. It wasn't everything around me, and initially it wasn't. And since then I have changed everything around me. But the change had to start with me. And that was getting sober. That was learning not to hate myself. And that was learning that as long as I had kind of a doom and gloom mindset, which leads to our next thing, that doom and gloom mindset is what I had for a decade. And just nothing went right. Because in here, it wasn't right, and I set myself up for failure. And that's one thing that I've seen folks that have come out of incarceration onto the registry that has been a hang-up, is they come out thinking it's going to be impossible. Several guys that I was inside with that I thought, man, this dude's got it, he's taking accountability, he's definitely changed who he was, he's going to succeed. They're back in prison. Not because of reoffense, but because they had that mindset and the registry became a barrier for them and they just set themselves up for failure. You know, and then, so aside from that is also being skeptical, having zero trust of people. Not healthy. I had that initially and I didn't let anybody in. And it got very, very difficult very quick. But as that skepticism became healthy, to where it's like, okay, I'm going to be leery, but I'm not going to be afraid. Completely changed the outlook on things and made it to where I could open up my PO a little bit, to where I could open up to my family, to where I didn't have to go and be a nervous wreck at a job interview. Because obviously all that's part of success on parole. Having a job, having a support system, being open to your PO. But then deciding to succeed came a couple months into this. And it was strictly because of my sobriety. And I know for different folks, sobriety looks different. You know, maybe it's sobriety from drugs and alcohol. Maybe it's sobriety from toxic people. Maybe it's sobriety from hating yourself. For me, I got all three. I was just a walking dumpster fire of issues. And I still am. The difference is I know how to work with that now. So a lot of times I'm asked, both in just speaking to folks, trying to encourage them, both in AA, of which I'm a member, and oftentimes am asked to share my testimony at church. I'm asked, how do I shape my thinking? What can I do differently? Why should I keep going even when it seems impossible? Well, how do I shape my thinking? By making the conscious choice to do so. Because, you know, you can hear about it, I heard about it the whole time I was inside. I was locked up for 3 years and 2 months. The whole time inside, I heard change your thinking, cognitive behavior therapy, restorative justice, all this stuff about thinking. But until I decided that I was going to change my thinking, nothing changed. But once I made that decision, I was able to plug myself into different support groups. I was able to talk to those that have been through the fire and get advice from them. And through that, created a whole new mindset. And then what can I do differently? Be willing. I simply became willing to hear those around me. I became willing to listen to my PO. I became willing to accept I am on the registry. I have to do what the state requires, despite the damages that it causes, despite my own opinions of it, despite, just how toxic it is. Whenever I decided, I am willing, it became easier. I'm not going to say it became easy, but it became easier because I wasn't trying to bucket every step of the way. And then why should I keep going even when it seems impossible? Because it is going to seem impossible. I'm not going to stand up here and say, hey, everything's going to be okay. You're going to be on the registry, or somebody you know is going to be on the registry, and it's going to be a cakewalk. No, it's going to suck. It's going to seem like it's impossible at times. But you keep going because in time you learn to live with the registry. In time you will build a circle around you of folks that accept you, or I was going to say you, so I don't have to keep saying 1,000 things. I'm going to say you, and that's talking about whether you yourself is on the registry or somebody you know is on the registry. Just blanket statement there. But regardless of the things that are placed in front of us, it's never impossible. For myself, with that, I'm going to lead into this also. I am now off parole. Obviously, I'm out of the state of Missouri. So I'm off parole. I completed September of last year. I now own a house. I have a beautiful family, and I own my own business. I never thought that would be possible, and I'm also 5 years sober, coming up on 6 next month, God willing. If you would ask me a decade ago where I thought I'd be at 26 years old, I'd say dead. Dead face dead. That's where I thought I was going. But I've been given this opportunity because I kept going when it seemed impossible. So how did I shape my thinking? And how can other people? By setting realistic, obtainable goals. Don't set that goal like I heard so many guys do in prison. Oh, I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm going to be a rapper. Why? There's so much more to it. Realistic, obtainable goals. I'm going to complete parole. I'm going to stay sober. I'm going to reconnect with my family. I'm going to build a life for myself. I'm going to find a job. The guys that I know that came out with that mindset and had those goals are still out today. The guys that came out immediately, I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to be a rapper. I'm going to make millions. Those guys hit the ground running, but they very quickly burnt out because they realized that it was not a realistic, obtainable goal. Also, how do I shape my thinking? A lot of guys will come out, guys and gals will come out looking at the P&P guidelines. They seem redundant. I can't tell you how many times I read the same thing over and over and over and over. Initially, I'm like, screw this. This is stupid. I know what I got to do. I just got to be a law-abiding citizen. No. Just accept them for what they are. Push through it, know it's temporary, and then move on. Take the stuff you've learned and transfer it into regular life. And granted, it will never be regular on the registry, but we can make it as regular as we can. And then identify motivators or reasons to keep on the right path. For me, it was as simple as looking at what my life was before. I didn't draw a sober breath for a decade. And mind you, like I said, I'm 26. So that was from the ages of 9 to 19 that I drank. I did not draw a sober breath for a decade. I don't remember a day going by I didn't want to die. When I turned 16, I started working naturally, but I couldn't hold a job down because I'd show up drunk or I wouldn't show up at all. At the end of the day, even though I've been told not to say it, I say it, I was a monster. I was the monster that I allowed myself to be created into by the one that raised me. But what can I do different? I can follow orders, whether it's P&P, it's my therapist, whoever it is. I can obey. I bucked authority, and that's what got me in the position that I was in. I got sober and stayed sober because I realized that because of that sobriety, I was able to have a clear head to think. I was able to live with myself. I was able to ask for help when I needed the help. And I was able to be willing to change. Because I didn't have that alcohol-fueled toxic masculinity, that alcohol-fueled bulletproofness, and I was able to simply be me. And I also got involved in different support groups. As I said, I'm a member of AA. I go to Celebrate Recovery as well to work on the other aspects of my addiction that are aside from alcohol. And I actually did get plugged into the state-mandated therapy group. Even though I thought it was a joke initially, I got plugged in, applied myself, and I actually did learn some stuff. And that's another way of my thinking. When I was locked up and had to do it in prison, I just did the bare minimum. I didn't apply myself. I'm not going to lie. I didn't, because I thought it was a joke. But then I sat down and thought real hard on it, and yeah, you know, maybe all of it doesn't apply to me. But some of it does, so why shouldn't I apply myself? And just by that simple mindset, it made doing that group therapy more bearable for me. And then having an open dialogue with those around you, meaning PO, therapist if your state requires it, family, boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever is around you, even an employer. Just being open. Being willing to go to whoever is closest to you and be like, hey, look, I'm not okay today. Or, hey, I'm having these thoughts. Because then a problem shared is a problem half solved. You may not know what to do with it by yourself. But as soon as you tell us and talk to somebody, well, they may know somebody that's gone through the same thing and give you some advice. Or maybe they themselves have. And that's difficult. I still struggle with that today. But I'm willing to do it more often today than I was prior to all of this. And then using the time inside as a staging ground. Getting ready for that deployment of being on the registry. Folks that are in the military, folks that do storm work even, tree companies, linemen, stuff like that, they have a staging ground before they go into the midst of it. They check their gear. They check their mindsets. They check their health and safety. Same thing can be done on the inside. Since I've been out, like I said, I've started my own company. We do storm cleanup. If we didn't check our gear before we deployed, if we didn't check the mindsets of the crew, if we didn't check the safety of our vehicles, bad things would happen because we deal with trees on houses. People can die doing that. Same thing applies here. If you don't check yourself before you come out, if that groundwork isn't laid, failure is unfortunately pretty imminent. There are the exceptions. I'm not going to say that there aren't. But those that have the best success do the groundwork on the inside or do the groundwork prior to having to deal with the registry, whether that's in county jail, on bond, in prison, whatever that looks like. And then again, just asking for help. And like I said, with the why should I keep going even when it seems impossible? Because it is. If it wasn't possible, I would not be here today. Because the registry, as many folks know, does create the issues. Since I've been out of prison, I've been robbed at gunpoint 6 times. I live in St. Louis, Missouri. Not a good place. All 6 of those, when they were questioned, found me on the registry. I've had my door kicked in twice. Same thing. Found me on the registry. I've been scammed. I've been isolated by the church. Or not isolated, but outcast by the church. I've had folks in AA even create issues for me simply due to the fact that I'm on the registry, so they felt I shouldn't be allowed AA. And that was to keep me sober and on the right path. But I can't go back to those meetings because those people are there. And each and every one of those times, I wanted to give up. Each and every one of those times that I was robbed, I said, why didn't he shoot me? It would have been easier had he done that. It seemed impossible because that registry is so public. But I kept pushing. I asked for help. I talked to those around me. I expressed my fears and concerns, and I also expressed my mindset of wishing I was dead again. Because I'm not going to say that those thoughts aren't there, because they are. My amazing girlfriend can tell you, I've had nights that I've wanted to go wrap my truck around a tree because it just seems like it's too much. But again, the difference between prior to all this and now is the mindset of being able to ask for help, being able to admit that I'm not okay. Because through that, I'm able to take another sober breath each and every day and keep moving forward and hopefully affecting change, whether it's in a setting like this or it's just on the street. So keep going, regardless of whatever is tossed in your way. I mean, on top of that stuff with the registry, I've had a dog that I got when I got out passed away. I've had girlfriends leave me. I've had 2 vehicles totaled, had to deal with all that. Had to learn how to buy a house because the apartment wouldn't renew my lease. I've had to go through all that stuff. But they're luxury problems. To me, at least. Because at least I have the opportunity to do all that. Because I'm sober and I'm still alive. So the big thing is just letting things run their course. Because there will be lots of good. You'll reconnect with folks. You'll get jobs. I mean, just within a few months of getting out, within 10 days before I even met my PO, I had my first job. Within a week of being there, they saw what I knew. I got promoted to a field supervisor. And all that happened before I met my PO. So when I went to my PO's office, and she said, well, what have you been up to since you've been home? Well, I went to AA meetings, I got a sponsor, and I got a job, and I'm now a field supervisor. Her eyes bugged out of her head. It made that a little bit more of a cakewalk than it would be had I gone in and said, nah, I've been sitting on the couch watching TV, which a lot of guys do. So the good and the blessings will come. After I got laid off from that job because it was landscaping, I ended up getting a job at a dry cleaner. Within a month, I was a store manager. Within 90 days, I was a district manager. Within 4 months, I was regional manager. But then the trials happened. Customers complained because I was on the registry. So what did? They let me go. Well, I got a job with a tree company. A buddy of mine, his dad owned it. Well, I ended up having a guy threaten my family if I didn't agree to let him frame me and talk to my employer and try to say that I was trying to get with a minor. He threatened to kill me and my family. Well, what do I do to protect my family? I'm like, all right, dude, go ahead, call my employer. Say that, whatever. Well, to protect the business, what did he have to do? Let me go. And that was right after I bought a house. So there comes more trials. How am I going to pay my bills? I just got this house. How am I going to do this? But then the blessings come. The good things come. I had some folks come in my life through AA that were business owners. They helped guide me along the path to build my business, to start my business, encouraged me to go ahead and do it. Now I'm nearing my first year in business, and I'm now in 3 markets. I never thought that would be possible, especially when I faced those trials. There's no way I thought I would have what I have today. So just let things run their course, because if you lose that hope, this ties into, why keep going when it seems impossible? Because it's life. A lot of times folks on the registry will look at it and be like, it's because I'm on the registry. Go down to the 7-Eleven and talk to the cashier. Go out to eat and talk to the waitress. Go to Walmart and talk to the store associate. Everybody has problems. I mean, yes, maybe ours are more defined or easier to isolate as to a root cause, but everybody has problems. And as soon as I was able to realize that that is life, I was able to start actually thriving instead of just surviving. Because I'm like, hey, you know what? Everybody has these problems. Am I going to let it hold me back so I'm miserable like the gal that should be retired because she's 75 working at the 7-Eleven? No, I'm going to freaking thrive. So I did. And then moving forward, I could have stayed stuck in those old patterns, because those old patterns, the old me, those guys that robbed me at gunpoint, I would have found them before the cops did. I would have resolved that. That would have been a lot more fulfilling to my pride and ego than letting the cops deal with it. Those times I was cheated on, well, I would have gone and whooped that dude's butt. That's the old me, though. I could have gone back to bars and drinking when I got off parole. You know, that's the fun crowd. Let's go play pool, drink something, and go drive down back roads. Why not? Because it would wind me back up in prison. I'd be miserable and I'd lose everything I built. So how have I stayed moving forward, even after off parole, after the leash was cut and I was set free? I stayed in recovery. I stayed connected to those support groups. I stayed connected with my family, and I communicate. Excuse me. I communicate when I'm not okay. I communicate when things are going good. I communicate when I'm just indifferent. Because then, I don't have to deal with it myself. I don't have to listen to that little, you-know-what committee up in my head that says, oh, well, you're a failure. Oh, it's going to be impossible because you're on the registry. I don't have to listen to that. Because I didn't call my buddy Jake. I'm like, yeah, bro, you're doing good. Dude, you probably pissed some people off because you are succeeding. I can talk to my girlfriend who tells me, yeah, you're doing great with the kids. You're doing great with the employees. You're doing great with the customers. You're making progress. I can talk to a multitude of my friends that point that stuff out when I need it. And they also call me out on my dumb stuff whenever I do that too. So that helps keep me in check because I've stayed plugged in. And even though this is my closing slide, just a few other things I did breeze over is when we do face those trials and stuff, especially while we're on paper, talk to that PO. Don't be ashamed of it. Because what I had to learn is it's not my fault that these people did what they did. That first thought in my head was the old me. It was, I'm going to find them, I'm going to inflict some damage. Well, that immediately got cast out because I know that's not the answer. The second thought was it's my fault. I'm to blame for their actions. That don't make much sense, but that's what I told myself. They chose to commit a crime, but used the excuse as it was my fault because I was on their registry. And we have to remember that it's not our fault. Yeah, it's our fault we are on the registry, correct. But it's not our fault if people decide to be a vigilante. So having to keep that mindset in place, for myself at least, is essential. Because it's so easy to blame myself. It is. Because I know I'm the one that got myself on the registry. But I didn't make the decision to break the law when they robbed me. They made that decision. So, I mean, I know I was supposed to take until whatever time, 5:30, I think. And I've only taken a half hour. I don't know, to me it's just real simple. We can choose to merely survive, which would just be, you know, checking with the PO, check those boxes on that checklist, go home, go to work, eat, sleep, repeat. I didn't want that life, and I don't want that life for any of y'all. I want you to be able to thrive. I want your families to be able to thrive. And I'm standing here at 26 years old, just shy of a year off parole, coming up on 6 years sober, telling you it's possible to thrive because I am. I call it blessing. I call it, you know, my higher power. You can call it whatever you want. because for each of us it may be different as to who you attribute the credit to. But at the end of the day, had I given up, had I caved and decided surviving was good enough, had I just said screw it, I'd either be back in prison right now or I'd be dead. But I'm not. So with that, feel free to follow me on Facebook or TikTok. That's all I got. No. But if anybody got questions, I'm willing to answer any questions before we wrap up. What's up?
Dustin, thank you very much for your speech. I enjoyed it. I'm 8.5 years post-release myself, and like you, I've been pretty successful, and a lot of the things that you talked about, I experienced as well. And one of the thoughts that I've had over the years is, why is it important, to be a part of NARSOL and other organizations that are out there like WAR, or Texas Voices, any number of them that are out there. And I think it's important for people like us to share our stories of success and whatnot, because for us, we've been blessed, we've done well, but there are others who aren't doing so well. And that's what I tell myself. That's why I think it's important to be a member of NARSOL and other organizations, because we're fighting for them maybe more than we are for ourselves. But I'm just curious what your thoughts are along those same lines.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a good point, because I mean, again, being a member of NARSOL and those other organizations that do the same thing, that's part of staying plugged in. Because then folks that have had the same experiences, one, we can connect and share those and process that. Two, I got the newsletter when I was incarcerated, and reading some of those stories helped during the process of shifting my thinking. Because one, I knew everybody wasn't against me. Two, I read stories of other folks on the registry and heard the good things along with the bad things. So to be involved in a group such as this, an organization such as this rather, just opens up many doors. Because if I wasn't a member of this group, of this organization, I wouldn't be here right now being able to share my testimony, my experience, strength, and hope with y'all. Along with these other speakers that are here this weekend, they wouldn't be able to come speak either. And it all builds upon each other. Rather, it's simply to succeed in life and thrive instead of survive. Rather, it's, learn about restorative justice, or it's learn about, going and doing some advocating and lobbying to try to change things. Each aspect has its purpose, and each one of us in our time will fall into different roles as we're called or as we're ready. So, I mean, that's why I find being a member is very important, because it is another avenue to stay connected and to stay in check as well.
Hi, if someone were being released today, what would your advice be to that individual for the first 30 days?
That's a good one. Slow and steady. I mean, don't come out guns blazing as far as, thinking I've got to do all of this right now. I came out with a few things in mind. One, I know I have to have a job. That's a requirement of PMP. Two, I need to get connected to AA, because I was in AA on the inside. I need to get connected on the outside. Three, I need to get my license. Those were the only three things on my list. Well, also with AA, get a sponsor. But those were the only things on my list for that first 30 days, was this is what I needed to do. So don't come out thinking you have to do this list. Just come out with this list. Essentials. Basics first.
That's very good and very, pertinent. I do agree with that.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for sharing your story. So how long is this list appropriate before they get to this list? Or this list, or this list?
For each person, it's going to be different. I mean, for me, I was blessed to, like I said, within 10 days, I had a job. And then I mean, luckily I ended up paroling out to my mother's home, and she helped me get my license back. And I still had my same car from when I got locked up, so it was a little bit easier for me when not having to worry about, making that money to buy that first car and all that other stuff. So for each person, it's going to be different. The big thing is, with that, ties into staying connected to that community, because that's where that saying of a problem shared is a problem half solved, because then they can talk about it. Whether it's with parents, spouses, PO, say, hey, this is what I want to do. Do you think I'm ready? That's what I did as I made each move in my life, as far as getting the job, getting the license, staying on track with parole, changing jobs, finding a place to live, because I knew I didn't want to stay at my parents' house forever. I just simply sat down, had that open communication, and said, hey, do you think I'm ready to add this to the list?
What if you don't have a desire to add anything to the list and you are perfectly happy with the way it is?
That's surviving, not thriving. At least that's what I would say for myself, because one of the main mottos that I stick with for myself is from an old football coach of mine. He always told us, a football player never stays the same. He either gets better or he gets worse. So for me, what that tells me today is each and every day, I don't stay the same. I either get better or I get worse. So, I mean, for that list, maybe, it's not always talking about material things. It may be saying, I want to work on self-love. I want to work on my patience. I want to work on being able to communicate. There's always something to be added. At least from my experience, at least, is what I would say.
I have something to add to your list then.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a 20-year-old grandson that has he admitted himself to an alcoholic rehab. Okay. He's got a DUI. He's on that path. Have you ever considered doing speaking or supporting or support group through the colleges? He's in college, so
as far as that goes, a lot of that also ties more into legal barriers. Mm-hmm. Due to the fact of a lot of colleges, because I'm on the registry, mm-hmm. I'm not welcome. But that's also one thing that I do intend to work with NARSOL with, as well as other groups, of being that folks that have been survivors of sexual abuse can go speak. What about those on the other side of it? Or what about those, dealing with, and a personal story with this one, I tried to get a job at a rehab because it was a specific rehab that only hired people that were in recovery. I met all the requirements. They required minimum 3 years sober. I had 5 years sober at the time. It was actually a week after I celebrated 5 years sober, so I went to apply. I had a job. I had references. I was working the steps with my sponsor. When I did the interview, they loved me, offered me a job on the spot. Then came the question, well, we got to run a background check. Are you okay with that? Are you going to pass it? Nope. No, I won't. Google my name real quick. I'll tell you why. They said, yeah, no, you can't work here. Well, that's what I figured. But let me ask you this. Why? I said, well, because it's a sexual offense. I said, okay. Well, I know some of the folks you have working for you. You have folks that have felonies for theft, have felonies for domestic assault, have felonies for drug possession. What's the difference? Well, you're on the registry. So that's a big issue, because my response to any of that is any addict is going to have a background. There's very few that don't. But majority of the time, the addicts or alcoholics that are going to have the best testimony are the ones that have been through the fire. Because as my sponsor would tell me, there's no testimony without a test. And I've been tested and I've came out on the other side better for it. So I guess long answer for your question, and in short, I'd say I would love that opportunity to do that, but right now legally I can't, just due to the registry and college insurance requirements and standards.
I was going to say, have you tried?
I've attempted at Wash U and SLU up in St. Louis, and because of their insurance policies and state guidelines and everything else, they're not going to let a registrant on the campus, unfortunately.
Thank you.
But along those lines also, like I said, I mean, you're welcome to reach out to me on Facebook or anything else, and I do talk to addicts and alcoholics everywhere. I make it a point to attend on AA meetings on Zoom because I can hit different states, and I love to make those connections. So at the end of the day, I can't keep what I have if I don't freely give away what was given to me, and that's that support to stay sober.
I just want to say thank you. You're a good success story for everybody to hear. I'm from Parsall in Pennsylvania, which is like Narsall. And what would you tell somebody how to be successful? Like one thing, what is one thing to tell somebody? I deal with a lot of inmates. They're not upfront sometimes about their records. And I have a 70-year-old man that's getting out of a state correctional institution who hasn't done any of the required classes in there. He's been writing to me for close to a year, and even though I pull everybody's record when I start writing to them, because of the resources, I need to know if there's any kind of restrictions for housing and everything like that. So I already know their record, but I'm waiting for them to be upfront with me, and I can understand their point of view as to why they aren't. So now he's getting out, hasn't done any of those. Now he's maxing out, actually. So what would be one thing to tell individuals? There's also some people that will write me and say, I'm ashamed of what I did. I'm surprised that you even want to help me, which just breaks my heart. You know, to me, it being a Christian, a sin is a sin, there's no gravity. And since I've joined Parsall, they've allowed me in their fearless group, which they normally wouldn't because I am not a registrant. But because the advocacy work that I do, they actually sent me here, which was a blessing. And now I actually join once a month on the Axol group in California. So it's a big eye-opener to see both sides of everything. But what would be that one thing that you would say contributed to your success? It seems like you just dust your feet off and keep moving, which I always tell people it's like water off a duck's back. You gotta keep going, gotta keep going. But also, is it your mindset or is it your environment? Which I tell people, it's like it's like a community that raises a child. So what would you say is that one thing coming from your end, you know?
I mean, for me, it's multiple aspects. As far as pertaining to the individual and then different other situations, such as that 70-year-old being released, the thing I tell him, and maybe I'm a little bit of a jerk for it, swallow your pride. It's that ego that gets in the way. And for me, I was real egotistical. I had that pride in stacks. I thought I was all that. Until I was able to swallow that pride, let go of that ego, I wasn't able to become willing to change my mindset, which is the other aspect of that answer, is it is the mindset. But before that mindset could change, that ego had to go. And then also, I mean, you brought up the environment, so as far as that goes, one thing I was told by a close friend of mine and pastor and ex-one percenter was the only thing that has to change is everything. People, places, and things. If you go back to hang out with the same people, you're going to do the same things. If you go back and hang out with the same people or places, go to the same places, you're going to find the same people and do the same things. So nothing changes if nothing changes. So that means that the only thing that has to change if you came up in that environment is almost everything. I don't talk to really anybody from before prison. I've got two longtime high school friends that I still talk to. But they were the friends that believed in me. They were the friends that tried to get me sober. That's the only reason I talk to them. The guys I used to party with, the gals I used to party with, the people I sold with, the people I dealt moonshine drugs with, I don't talk to them because frankly, I don't know if they're alive, in prison, dead, still doing their stuff, or cleaning their lives up. I don't know, and frankly, I don't care because I'm not taking the chance to go back into that lifestyle. If any of them reach out to me and say, hey, I want help, I'm there. But otherwise, I'm not taking the chance going back.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Dustin, when you first got out and you had these plans, you know, you had prepared yourself and as much as you could, you got a job. What was the first smack in the face? And how did it make you, in other words, it really set you back on your heels? It made you doubt whether you could continue on that path.
The first situation would have been when I ended up being chased by a guy when I left work. And so I got out Thanksgiving Day of 2020, and this was like December, middle of December, about a week or two before Christmas. And there was a local vigilante, as he called himself, that sat outside the work parking lot. I work for a landscape company. Anybody that's done landscaping knows you have the main company lot. There's usually a gate. We had a gate. He sat right around the corner. Ended up tailing me. At first I didn't realize what was going on. And then he started trying to run me off the road. So I did what I knew to do, which was just call State Patrol. Say, hey, I got a vehicle trying to run me off the road. I have no idea why. I'm simply trying to get home from work. Can you send an officer? And they didn't. And I ended up in the ditch. And he ended up proceeding to beat me pretty severely and held me at gunpoint and said, give me your money. Give me everything you have. You shouldn't be out. You're nothing but a sex offender. He used very much more vulgar words. But he was gone before State Patrol got there. Investigations ended up leading them to him because he had a pretty common, or not common, uncommon car, so they were able to match paint scrapes. But at the end of the day, that was the first thing, and that shook me. But luckily at that time, I'd had a sponsor, an AA. So as soon as I got off, finished with State Patrol, I called my PO, let her know I had law enforcement contact, said, all right, feel free to give me a call, I'm calling my sponsor. And I called my sponsor and talked to him until he actually ended up coming to pick me up and got me home. So that would be the first situation that I dealt with. But just did the steps I needed to do. Kept moving forward.
Dustin, thank you for your words of wisdom. Really appreciate it. And I think actually they're quite applicable to most people.
That's the hope. I just thank everybody for listening, and I'll be up here if anybody's got any questions that they didn't want to say out loud or anything. And hopefully somebody got something from this, even just one person, then I did my job. So again, thank you all.